Okay, so just a few remarks, because the job is a big job. There is a lot of things. Just some remarks. The first is about the potential, the comparison, the three methodologies, the three approaches. And maybe, even if it's difficult to compare the three, maybe some approaches are better than the other one. Just for instance, about the second methodology, I have some questions about the fact that very often you have no relevant indicators. Maybe it is the sign of the weaknesses in the methodology, because it seems that the third one or the first one have better results than this one. So it is my first question. My second question is about the potential bias in the methodology. First, the bias in the list of projects you have chosen, because particularly it's not representative. You have maybe, for instance, about the airports, you have two in Cyprus and in Greece. And my question is there some bias in the session of the case studies? And about bias, my second question is about you design the indicators concern, for instance, the typology concerning governance, concerning revenue, and so on. And maybe when you say that there are some difficulties in governance, outline the content of the for each project. So this is my second question about the risk to have some bias at the starting point of your methodology. And my third question is about the risk. You mentioned, for instance, just Thierry, you mentioned that when you have low risk, it's better for PPP and so on. But my main concern is that very often what we observe, the public authority is not risk neutral. The public is very often risk lover, because they want the project, whatever the cost, whatever the price, because they think that the result will be very good, and the consequence is that there is a risk lover. When you have a public authority behaving like a risk lover, with the behavior of the private partner in case of PPP, often because the public authority is risk lover, you can have specific behavior of the private partner. And maybe it could be interesting in the list of older projects to see that at the beginning some projects were definitely bad and high level of risk, and some projects were rather good projects with low level of risk. And maybe another kind of bias at the beginning of the story of a project, when you have a bad project and a risk lover authority, obviously the result will be complicated. So here are my three main questions, but I take into account that it's you did a lot of job.
Thank you, Thierry. I think most of the questions are targeting directly your presentation and the work that you have done. So first one in relation to the comparison between the three methodologies, then the issue on the bias and the way of design of indicators were not also causing bias, and the third is the risk.
Daniela, can I intervene? I think the first question we need to respond to is the bias. We cannot address the bias, and most of the work is skeptical.
To answer that one?
I think that I'd like to, yes. Eve, you're quite right. The sample is not unbiased. The sample is a convenient sample, if you like, that 14 partners plus another so many from a project that was completed before, the Cost Action TU1001. And obviously, information again is questionable because it's only the information that was made available to us. Even though diligently collected, it's always about what sort of information you can pick up from publications and that relevant stakeholders will disclose. So one, yes, the sample as such is not unbiased in that sort of sense.
Okay.
This is exactly why we have followed these many diverse methods. So we are approaching a purely qualitative approach. So the Goran's presentation, he goes in and looks at the team there. I mean, you probably saw names, various partners involved in each analysis. Went in and looked at the projects to actually see what was there. And that is very helpful input to correct us. Even following the three different analytical approaches had the same sort of background, actually followed different ways and find different possibly outcomes because of the bias. And you will see that these methods are very, very different in approach. The qualitative and comparative analysis is very close to the sample, while the econometrics is one that is further away and looks only at the indicators. So this is what we did in order to address the bias, which we know is there. Hopefully through the results and the combining of results, we are able to see what else we can actually come out to the world and say we are fairly certain of these, and these are the ones we are less certain about, and these but we're not very sure about. And I think that's the best we can do.
Okay.
The indicators, which I think is also a sort of math question. And what you also see through the presentation is the improvement of indicators. So, for example, we went through a first pass of the analysis that some indicators were presenting some issues. So in a second pass and a third pass of the analysis, we are correcting them so as to become more robust. Some now show full robustness, like the implementation and the institutional context indicators. Also, you might notice that while the level of control was initially included under the revenue support indicator, now, for example, and that was presented in the implementation in the importance analysis, it's independent. And so it comes out very strongly, for example, that level of control that the infrastructure has within the network, something we know as well, is a determining factor and also a factor that was able to halt the crisis in many cases. And
okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, to specify on the two further points, actually, on the one with respect to PPPs and with a risk living private party, well, what we then observe, but this is in the very preliminary results of the first runs of the analysis which we have had, is that in that case, the project overall tends to perform better. But in the point is what the role of the government in that case will be. We see that then less risk goes on the public side, but the main one big issue, of course, in case of force majeure, and force majeure can also be a crisis, for instance, like we have had. And therefore, we are doing more in-depth analysis now with this crisis element, including this also as a variable in the analysis, and trying to see whether there is a significant difference in projects, in performance. Projects which were started and awarded, and so started operation before the crisis, or projects which were awarded and or started after the crisis. But this is part of the analysis which we are still doing at this stage. Because we may assume that this crisis, to be considered as force majeure, will have an impact on what actually happens with the final risk division. And then, of course, you usually get a shift in the risk away from the private side, more towards the public side again. There are a number of cases, at least, in which we can also physically observe this. But we want to test whether there is a very significant relationship with this crisis. So 2008-2009 financial crisis will be included in the analysis also as a variable. And then for the SI analysis, and why in some cases no relevant were found. Actually, I'd like to refer to the colleagues from Twente. So I don't know whether Ibsen or Hans or both, you can take a word on this and try to explain what could be a potential cause for this, because you have been doing this analysis, you have been applying this method. So Ibsen or Hans, could you pick up?
Sure.
Yeah. The approach used here is one in which you guys many factors or factorize the probability distributions of many factors output variable. So there are many variables producing noise in the variable. You see this kind of misleading results. And say my best guess about the results concerning traffic revenue output variables, in which we couldn't find significant variables. There are some kind of input variables that produce noise output variable. We already identified them, and the suggestion is to leave out specific input variables concern or real traffic and revenue support. That's only non-informative is the correct word to say that. If you do that with certain variables, you can again back the results sometimes gotten before. And for the output traffic and revenue support, significant factors become again the signal setting. Yeah? For example, and actually as well financial setting. So that might be the reason why we are in those results. And we are putting forward the idea of leaving out variables for modeling all the rest of the analysis to obtain some more sensible results. answer the question.
If I do that, it be very much the noise as Ibsen describes, and this is why, and this is basically as you initially pointed out, Eve, there is bias, and in traffic and revenue are the outcomes which we pair to forecast that are the most problematic, if you like, because the model initially says, or takes into account, there's that is correct. So assume that the forecast is correct, which, as we know very well, in most cases it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Does produce noise in this analysis.
May I add something about the traffic? When you define the forecast, you meet some situation where you have different forecasts. For instance, where we did the same job in France about the comparison between the traffic observed and the traffic forecast for some motorways. What we observe is that the different level of forecast, because at the beginning of the project, the forecast was very high, and then the more you are close to the beginning of the project, they were reducing the level of forecast. And according to the if you are doing the comparison between the traffic and that forecast, it's okay. Then you do the comparison between the traffic and the first forecast, it's totally different. Another kind of bias.
In most, consider the forecast at award stage.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it does contain a lot of political bias at that point. It's still a project that needs to get off, and everyone will push it off the ground. And we know that. This is something we cannot build better with. Obviously, the comparisons of methods would give us a better approach. You might even see, for example, though not significant, that the funding scheme in the econometrics is negative, an improved indicator. So the smaller the value, the more pure PPP project, the more pure private project. You see it with a negative indicator, with a negative sign. If you go back, you'll see it with a negative sign. And that actually says that projects will tend to be a little bit better or push a little bit better. Obviously, it's not as significant because our data is not big enough because of 1,000 things. The line is correct, and that's also very important because we are dealing with a relatively small sample.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. I don't know if there is any other question. Just small one, because we are reaching the 1 hour and 30 minutes of this webinar. If someone wants to talk more, otherwise I will just give the floor to Athena, to our coordinator. On my side, to thank for your participation. To read that in few days, this session will be available from our benefit website. I also welcome you all to discover the website, Benefit for Transport EU, where you could find lots of publishable information and reports, and where you can also take part in project discussions. And aware that by the end of the summer, most probably beginning of September, when we'll produce our conclusions, we'll have another webinar to share with you. Athena, if you want to also to give as project coordinator some last words.
I'd like to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for being here. thanking the presenters. Eve, thank you very much for the questions you brought up, because it allows us to look further into what we're doing and also improve on our work and share better the information. Work, we are continuously improving, and hopefully we'll be soon ready to provide full results on our work.
Thank you all. I will with everyone, but we'll see you again in our webinar in September.
Bye. Bye.
And in Frankfurt.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Has left the conference.